Welcome to the MMA on the Meal on MMA podcast. Wow, you'd think I would have the intro down by now. Anyways, UFC 303 is this weekend, and we also have PFL this Friday. So I'll start with the PFL because we like to give them a little bit of shine before we get into the UFC, which is what you're all here for, but give PFL a chance. So here we go. PFL 6, Brendan Lougane versus Justin Gonzalez in the men's 145 division. We also have 170 on this card. I am going with Lougane to win the fight. Realistically, he's a massive favorite. I think he's a prohibitive favorite, something like minus 500 to minus 600. So don't bet on this one. But, he is the better striker of the two. I think he's the better, not necessarily the better pure wrestler of the two, but the better MMA wrestler. I'm just adjusting my microphone here. It was a little bit quiet. But, you got to go with Lougane. Probably by decision. Gonzalez is tough enough. How often does Gonzalez get finished? He did get knocked out by Gabriel Alves Braga last time out, but that was the first time. And Braga is like a pretty powerful hitter. So, I'll go decision. Logan Story versus Luka Paquette. I'm going to go with Logan Story. This was not Paquette originally, right? Yeah, this was Staropoli originally. And Paquette was going to fight Zach Giusola. He's now up here. If your path to victory is submissions, as Paquette's tend to be, I mean, that is kind of his claim to fame, is the Lucanator choke that he hit on Dante Shiro. You're not likely to beat Logan Story. The man has no real neck to work with. He has no limbs to really submit. He is pretty submission proof. And I imagine he's not that big of a favorite. You could bet on Logan Story here. He's only like minus 250 to minus 280. There you go. Like, I feel more confident on this fight than I do on the Gonzalez Lougane one. So, I don't know. That's a little bit weird. Anyways, usual stance on gambling, by the way, here. If you want to bet for a little extra spice of life, go ahead. That's fine. It's what I do. But if you're looking to, make life-changing money, find a different method. This is not a path to financial freedom. Magomed Umalatov versus Brendan Ward. I'm going with Umalatov. He's kind of dull, if we're being entirely honest. He is a 6'1" welterweight, the typical Dagestani / Chechen / certain parts of Russia kind of pressure guy, training out of American Top Team. He's good. He's unexciting, but he'll get the job done against anybody that's not a really well-rounded fighter. He is a massive favorite in this one. There's a couple of betting odds I'm going to talk about today that are ridiculous, and his minus 1430 to minus 2500 is one of them. Like, Brendan Ward is a dangerous fighter. He is a knockout artist. He is strong. He is big. And Umalatov has faced very few people that can match him in terms of like size. And Ward can, but you do have to pick him. Like, if we're going just picks, it's Umalatov by like a rear naked choke or a decision. Gabriel Alves Braga versus Bubba Jenkins. Two true outcome fight. Bubba Jenkins is the wrestler. If he gets back to his roots, he can probably out-wrestle Braga, pick up a decision that way. But he likes to stand. He likes to bang. He likes to think that he's very, very slick. I am picking Braga to catch him and knock him out. Boom. There you go. I wonder, is Braga the underdog? Can I get underdog odds? No. Braga is the favorite. Damn it. I thought I had a little bit. I thought I had a little bit of a hot take there that I could get like even money, but no. Lorenz Larkin versus Alan Dominguez. I do not know Alan Dominguez all that well. He's an 11-6 fighter. I'm just looking at his record here. It's a lot of decisions. It's a lot of losses to guys who I recognize, like Sergio Casio, who fought on the Bellator card last week. And then I don't know. You can't. Let me put it this way. Can't pick him. Larkin by TKO. There you go. It's not based on any kind of like knowledge of him. I haven't watched his fights. And surprisingly enough, Dominguez is only like a plus 250 underdog. So, hey, Larkin at minus 286 to minus 310. That's bettable. Larkin's a good fighter. Chronically overlooked. Murad Ramazanov versus Shamil Musafayev. This is probably the big fight here. They're both undefeated Russian prospects. They're a big deal. Ramazanov is coming off the victory over Staropoli after the no contest in 1 against Roberto Soldic. He also has a victory over Sebastian Kadestam, who is a pretty good fighter. So he's got some names on his record. Musafayev, who's a little bit of a weirdo, likes to do spinning stuff and so on, but he has beaten Logan Storley, Alexei Kuchenko. These are, really solid wins. I'm going to go with Ramazanov. He is the boring but better based fighter. Musafayev, I think, is still too a little bit too Alexander Shlemenko, a little bit too who's the other Russian dude who likes to do all the spinny shit? I'm blanking. Let's go with the Shlemenko. He's got a little bit too much Shlemenko in him, and that can lead to him just getting grounded out and pressured to a decision. So I will pick Ramazanov to do that and pick up the W here. Moving on down, Timur Khizriev versus Enrique Barzola. I am going to go with Khizriev. He is a grinder. Barzola is a grinder. He is the more prominent one. Barzola is also a little bit small because I'm pretty sure he used to be a bantamweight. If I'm not very much mistaken. Yeah, one arch let a Magomedov. Yeah. He's a little bit too small. And Khizriev, if you're going to spot him, a size advantage is probably just going to ground you out, kind of like he did to Brett Johns, kind of like he did to Justin Gonzalez, kind of like he did to Richie Smullen, Daniel Weichel, etc. That's what we're looking at here. And, I like Barzola. I really do. He's incredibly hard-nosed, and he's made the most of what he's got. But, yeah, I got to go Khizriev. Go to Yamamuchi versus Andrei Korshkov. Korshkov was my pick to win this whole thing, and it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. I am going to pick him to beat Yamamuchi here. Yamamuchi is a really good fighter. I'm a big fan of his as well. This is about an even money fight, so you can bet either way. Yamamuchi is the favorite. He gets up to about minus 130. Korshkov down about as low as plus 110. I am going to go with Korshkov. He's the bigger guy. He's the more dynamic guy. He is a good striker, a well-rounded fighter when he puts it all together and does not make bad decisions. I'm relying on a guy who makes bad decisions. That's never a great feeling. But yeah, I am going to go Korshkov by decision, but not going to the playoffs. Kai Kamaka III versus Pedro Carvalho. I'm not going to be picking Pedro Carvalho just at all. He's chinny. He's not big. He can be grounded out. And yeah, that's Kamaka's game. Kai Kamaka by decision. Don Madge versus Neiman Gracie. Going with Neiman Gracie. He has not been good in a while. Gracie has been pretty poor. 2 and 4 in his last 6. And the wins are over Dante Shiro and Mark Lemminger, who are not good fighters. He's lost to Jason Jackson, Logan Storley, go to Yamamuchi twice. But I do pick him over Madge. Madge is just kind of really, really big. Anyways, Gracie by decision. I do need to sneeze, so give me a second here. It kind of came out of me without really sneezing there. Okay. Anyways, and then the final fight, Tyler Diamond versus Brett Johns. I'm taking Brett Johns by submission. So I'm a sucker for Brett Johns. I'm going to stick with it. I, for some reason, decided to close the best fight odds page, and I'll give you the odds on those last 3 fights I just spoke of. Madge is the favorite against Neiman Gracie. I'll be probably riding the plus 250 train on Gracie. Johns is a favorite at about minus 200, plus 150-ish the other way for Diamond, and Kamaka is a prohibitive favorite at minus 350 to 380, and Carvalho plus 300-ish down to about plus 230 is about as close as it gets. So there you go. There's your betting on that particular card there. And I'm seeing there's one championship. June 28th. What's one doing? I don't see a 1 card on Tapology. That's weird. We also have Invicta 55, which is the Toledo Bernardo versus Olga Rubin fight card. I'm taking Bernardo to win that one because she is phenomenally athletic. Her physicality is very, 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 very impressive. It's just she will make bad decisions, but Olga Rubin is someone who also relies on her physicality. The big bad. Someone who has, coming off a buggy choke over Claire Guthrie, nothing to sneeze at there. But her best win is Serena De Jesus and Cindy Dambois. So yeah, I gotta go with Bernardo. Otherwise, Kay Hansen's fighting up and comer Sayuri Cannon, who I'm not very familiar with, as you might have guessed there, but she's 3-0 and doesn't have a date of birth. That's weird. Typology has no age for her. But anyways, Kay Hansen's on the card, UFC veteran, as well as not much else. I mean, I'm a big fan of Katie Saul, but that's just me. And probably Brad Katona as well. And then let's get into the UFC here, because that's what you're here for, really. Alex Pereira versus Yuri Procházka, saving UFC 303 after Conor McGregor pulled out. And this card has been cursed. You lost the Conor McGregor versus Chandler fight to a broken toe. You also lost 3 better versions of the 205 co-main event idea, which is no longer even the co-main event anymore. That's how far it got down. But it was going to be Jamal Hill versus Khalil Roundtree Jr. We were excited for that. Roundtree fails a drug test. Jamal Hill versus Carlos Ulberg. We're excited for that. Jamal Hill hurts his knee. Ulberg versus Anthony Smith. We're still excited. Ulberg withdraws. And now it's Anthony Smith versus Roman Dolidze. Talk about a fight that has gone through various interesting versions only to end up at something very uninteresting. Anyways, I would like to overcomplicate Alex Pereira versus Yuri Procházka, but we saw this fight not that long ago. Alex Pereira won. We saw the dynamic, which is Procházka, in fact, is fast enough and potent enough offensively to get to Pereira with his boxing and do things and win exchanges. But when it comes down to it, Pereira has the nuance. Nuisance. You could say he is a nuisance, but nuance to land the power clean shots, and also that Procházka doesn't really have a great answer for the low kicks. And also the fact that Procházka's talking about really esoteric stuff in the lead up to this fight suggests to me that he has no idea how to actually solve what Pereira is doing. Zero idea. I do not trust Yuri Procházka to make adjustments for this fight and fight any differently, really. So I have to take Pereira. I have to do that. Will I be surprised if Procházka wins? Absolutely not. Procházka is an incredibly offensively potent fighter, both as a grappler and as a striker. And Pereira has serious defensive liabilities. He does rely on his durability. He does rely on just being kind of big and strong a lot of the time. There is a window for Procházka to win the fight, but it's the same window that was there last time. It's the same dynamic, essentially. And I guess the only real concern is that Procházka apparently had broken toes last time and probably has those same broken toes this time, except that Yuri now knows that, but I don't think Yuri will do anything with that knowledge. So there you go. Anyways, I do have to pick Pereira by TKO. I'm not going to be surprised if Procházka wins. It should be a great fight because Pereira has nothing but really good fights, except for that Andre Michailidis fight, which is Michailidis' fault. And Procházka has nothing but great fights because he is crazy. So there you go. I'm still picking Pereira to win. I'm going to be picking Pereira against anybody whose usual path to victory is very wide open offense that leads to a knockout. There you go. Betting odds. Pereira is the favorite, -142 to -154. Procházka +116 to +125. Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopes. I am going with Diego Lopes because Brian Ortega does look very, very, he looks faded. I know he beat Yair Rodriguez last time out, but both Yair Rodriguez fights were just troubling. Some of the body language, some of the speed, some of the durability, not necessarily the durability, but the reactions to getting hit. They're not great. They're not good. And for Ortega, he's a guy who is always going to age out very rapidly, I thought, because if you look at his early fights, this is a guy who is losing, and then wins. And that was his trademark really throughout his career. With the exception of the Korean Zombie fight, which I think says more about Korean Zombie than it does about Brian Ortega, that's how he does it. He gives you the ability to land offense. He does not have good defense. He has venomous submission game. Lopes is the sort of guy who's going to bring chaos. He's going to stress those physical limitations that Ortega is starting to run into. He's also bigger than Ortega, which is something I don't think Ortega's ever particularly been able to deal with all that well. He's 3 inches taller. He's longer by 3.5 inches as well. So yeah, I've got Lopes. Ortega looks like a faded version of himself. He's only 33, so theoretically there's some time left, but I don't know. And there's also the fact that he was talking about going up to 155 before this, took this on relatively short notice. Like, this is another fight that saved the card, and is going to be back at 145 for that short notice fight while he's talking about going to 155. Now, I haven't heard anything about him getting heavier for that 155 run. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe he doesn't view that as a thing he needs to do, which in itself would be concerning. But I suspect that he's probably going to be cutting a little bit of extra weight this time. And that probably is not healthy for the cardio, not healthy for the durability, not healthy for fighting, just in general. So there you go. Lopes by TKO. He's the minus 142 to minus 152 favorite. Ortega plus 118 to plus 123. Anthony Smith versus Roman Dolidze. I have to pick Smith. Don't get me wrong, I'm not going to be surprised if Dolidze wins, but the way Dolidze wins fights is not the way that Smith tends to lose them. Like, he tends to lose fights by being outranged or just out athleticismed in a specifically quick variety. Dolidze is a physical freak in terms of his power, his strength, his durability, but he's not especially fast. He is a big guy, 6'2", 76-inch reach, but like, he's coming up from 185. He's been at 205 before, and he's perfectly fine size to it, but he's at 205 after having been a weight class down. He does not have much of a range game. Like, there is a range game to him that works against people who are very, very uncomfortable at range. But Smith is not uncomfortable at range. He just doesn't know how to be the shorter, less rangy fighter. You can see that in the Johnny Walker fight. But Dolidze's not going to do that. Dolidze he's a dumb meathead, is what it comes down to. He's a dumb meathead, and that's the type of thing that Anthony Smith has made a career out of beating. So I got to go with Anthony Smith. Like I said, decision, because Dolidze is not prone to getting subbed. He's not prone to getting finished. He's very, very durable. He's grappling sound from his submission defense point of view. So, yeah. Smith, I think, is the only underdog I'm picking on this card. He's plus 114 to plus 122. And Dolidze is minus 140 to minus 150. Mayra Bueno Silva versus Macy Chiasson. This was a fight that got a lot of negative press because a lot of people were talking about how this should be moved to the undercard to make room for a couple of cool fights that were on the undercard to move up, specifically Cub Swanson versus Andre Feely was one of the ones that was talked about that, as well as the Joe Pyfer fight against Marc-Andre Barrio. I think even some people talked about Peyton Talbot being on the main card instead of this fight. This fight is a battle between two of the best women's bantamweights in the world right now. And I know that doesn't mean much. I know the women's bantamweight division is in not good condition. The UFC had neglected it basically post Ronda Rousey, didn't really sign fighters for it, didn't really try to build it, didn't really inspire women of that size that this was a future for them. They realized that they probably had a better strawweight and flyweight division and kind of really pushed them over the bantamweight division. And that's kind of the problem. That being said, if you're going to have the division, you have to treat it like it's important. And this is a battle between MBS, Mayra Bueno Silva, who just fought for the title, and Macy Chiasson, who is one of your top-ranked fighters. The winner of this fight is in title contention. You can't put it on the undercard. I'm sorry. Like, it's just, that is a positionally bad idea for trying to recover this division, which did just get Kayla Harrison in it. So, again, the UFC is trying to do something with it again. Now, I unfortunately have very, very little faith in them to do anything beyond signing Harrison, but hey, still, I'm taking Mayra Bueno Silva. Chiasson cuts a lot of weight to make 135. She's talked about this being very, very difficult for her, and her body durability has been a problem for that. And she's also just really kind of a grinder. And if you look at, like, admittedly, Mayra Bueno Silva ran into problems in the clinch with Raquel Pennington. Lots of problems. Huge problems. That's why it was such a dull fight. But that's the first time that's really happened. We're talking, MBS managed to outclinch Holly Holm. She managed to outclinch Stephanie Egger. She managed to outclinch I'm blanking on the name. Lena Landsberg. Boom, there you go. And Landsberg and Pennington have both also beaten Jason. So like a little bit of MMA math comes into play there. But like, yeah, I don't trust the durability of Chasen. I don't trust the lack of dynamic offense that she brings to the table. And I do trust Mayra Bueno Silva to be like, a good athlete and somebody who, when presented with a pretty consistent one-note offensive approach, is probably going to do fine. So, MBS by decision, sub or TKO are on the table, but I'll go it goes the distance. And MBS is -110 to -117. Jason's -107 to -113. That is way too close. I'm not saying Jason has no hope. I mean, she's huge. She's big. She's got 5.5 inches of reach here to work with, or 6.5 inches of reach here to work with if she wants to. And that's not even taking into account the height size. But she's never really been an outside striker. She's never been overpowering. She's someone who does get hurt. You got to go with MBS, and I'm not really sure what the betting odds are doing there. Michael Venom Page versus Ian Machado Garry, IMG, versus MVP. That has a nice ring to it. I've always been an MVP hater, so I'm going to put that out full disclosure. I've never really picked him against a solid opposition. I picked Kevin Holland to beat him. I've done that a couple of times, 3 or 4 times. And it's because I just find him very flash in the pan, very limited substance. And he's 37 years old, so like, how long does that athleticism even keep up for? So I'm going with Ian Garry. I am doing that. But there is a question here because Ian Garry has seldom faced somebody with a longer range than him because he is facing a 5-inch reach disadvantage here. And the only guys longer than him he's fought are like Jordan Williams and Jeff Neal, but they're shorter despite having longer, reaches on paper. So there wasn't really a range factor to handle there. But I trust Ian Garry's ability to do homework. I trust Ian Garry's more diverse range game, as in he can fight in the pocket as well as on the outside and the clinch. And Michael Venom Page is really just an outside guy. He really, really, really clowns on guys who are not very good strikers throughout his career. And there's not really a lot of wins against anybody who you would consider to be serious. So I'm going to go with Ian Garry. If he loses, I'm not going to be surprised. Again, Michael Venom Page is a very unique challenge. He's got 6'3" height. He's got 79-inch reach. He is very, very good from the outside. If Ian Garry gets stuck fighting him on the outside, and he cannot make this into a bit of a dirtier fight, he can't force pocket exchanges, maybe even, clinching and wrestling as part of his game plan, he will probably lose. Like if he agrees to just have a Michael Venom Page fight or cannot force that out of it, then he will lose. But I'm never confident picking somebody who has to have that kind of narrow band of fight to have a game that functions. Garry is the favorite at -145 to -162. MVP is +120 to +130. I think it does go the distance. Joe Pyfer versus Marc-Andre Barrio. I'm going with Joe Pyfer. I like Marc-Andre Barrio. He's a great dude. I met him. He's awesome. And I will be cheering my heart out for this guy because, well, let's be honest, Pyfer is a Dana White, privileged guy. And I don't really love it. I don't love it. I am touched by the homeless kid making good storyline. Don't get me wrong, it's cool, but I'm always gonna be there for pissing on Dana White's parade. But I just don't see really what he does to win. He's not gonna do the outside game of Joker Jack Hermanson, where you stay at range and you do your thing because number one, he's shorter and less reach than Pyfer, so I don't think that would even really work. He is a guy who does do his best work in the pocket, where he can put up the volume and so on, and Pyfer just hasn't really lost to that. Pyfer is the harder puncher, probably the more venomous pocket guy, and probably the better wrestler too, honestly. Like Pyfer, not for nothing, Pyfer has shown off some really, really good double legs. So I wouldn't be surprised if he just puts Barrio on his back periodically. So I got Pyfer by TKO. There you go. That's all I can really say. Pfeiffer's minus 290 to minus 333. Barrio plus 235 to plus 250. I do think that that's a little bit wide. Like the idea that Pfeiffer is a larger favorite than Ian Machado, Garry, and Alex Pereira and Diego Lopes doesn't really sit right with me, given that this would be the best win of his career, like unquestionably. So I do think that's a little bit much. Andre Fili versus Cub Swanson. I would pick Prime Cub Swanson in this fight easily. But at 40 years old, don't get me wrong, he's still definitely game. He still seems to be fairly durable. His athleticism hasn't dropped off that badly, but there is a notable drop off. He's not what he used to be. There is a level of fighter that previously would not have been able to beat Cub Swanson and that now I think can, and that's Andre Fili. Fili is the longer fighter. He's got a good jab. He's got a good wrestling game. He can do some things. I don't think Cub Swanson is in the best headspace. I mean, there was that ill-fated 135 journey, and there's also the fact that he's been really, really, really prickly on social media lately with anyone suggesting, like, don't get me wrong, there were people suggesting that Joaquin Buckley is a bigger legend than Cub Swanson, which is wrong, but I think a fighter in a good headspace just kind of ignores that as opposed to gets involved with it. So I think that that's probably somewhat of a bad sign as well. So Fili with the range, with the durability, with the more in his physical prime, he's 34, so he's going to be in problems of his own. But like Cub Swanson's only wins lately are Hakeem Dawodu, who is a fighter that just will not take initiative. Darren Elkins, who is similarly very, very old and also has a very, very Cub Swanson defeatable game, and like a 2020 version of Daniel Pineda. So if Swanson comes out looking like prime Swanson, yeah, he'll take Fili. He's the more dynamic guy. He fights at a better combination pace than Fili does a lot of the time. And Fili's biggest problem is honestly that he's a team alpha male guy that doesn't fight like a team alpha male guy. And that I think has always handicapped his development. But I do have to go with him here. He is the favorite, minus 230 to minus 265. Swanson plus 90 to plus 200. That's too wide. Charles Jourdain versus John Silva. By the way, speaking of fights that are too wide, this one's ridiculous. Jourdain is a minus 114 to minus 122 favorite to minus 102 to minus 109 on Silva. Silva has one UFC win, and it's over Weston Wilson, people. And his biggest win is his Contender Series fight against Kevin Valenos, who has a good record on paper, but it's against really lackluster competition, and he's just a decent athlete. I don't know. There's a weird hype coming out of Jean Silva's Fight Nerds, right? Is this the Fight Nerds thing? Yeah, the fighting nerds out of Brazil. Caio Barraio's gym. Yeah, they're getting a weird amount of hype. And like, here's the thing. Caio Barraio's game, number one, isn't John Silva's game. But number two, it works because it's middleweight, and middleweight is a disaster. This is 145, my guys. And Silva, offensively potent, wild, aggressive striker with some power grappling game. It's going to be fine. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this guy doesn't belong in the UFC. I'm not saying that this guy is going to be, bad or anything like that. But he's a can crusher. Like, really. There is no one on his record except for Valenos who has a decent record. Like, even Weston Wilson in the UFC does not. Like, after Valenos, the best record is Vladimir Cardoso at 4-0. It's just not. I don't know what we're doing here. Anyways, I'm picking Charles Jourdain to probably have a slow start because he usually does. But as time goes on, he's the guy I trust to be deeper in combinations. He's the guy I trust not to be thrown off by Silva's like bully game. He's the guy I trust to be more dynamic and be able to hurt somebody a little bit more. Despite the fact that Jourdain fights like a man who's a way better athlete than he is a crazy person who somehow manages to get it done. So Jourdain by decision. I think he's that speed bump. I think he's that veteran speed bump for Jean Silva. And that may, you know what, maybe that wake up call, because like Silva is a fantastic athlete. And I do think that like with a properly built game, and he's 27, it's not too late, he could be quite good. I just don't think he is right now. Peyton Talbot versus Yanis Gamori. This is ridiculous. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm picking Talbot to win here. I'm picking him by TKO. He is a very good physical athlete. He is putting it together. He big brothered Cameron Simon in his last time out, and he's taking a step down to the 0-1 Yanis Gamori, who got big brothered in a way by William Gomez. There's no way to pick Gamori, but like the problem I have here is how is anyone betting on a fight that's minus 1,500 to minus 2,500 on Talbot? How do you bet on like what? Just why? I don't know. Like that feels like a fight that should have opened up at betting hearts and just no one should have bet on it. That's my thought. Anyways, Gamori's not a bad fighter. He's got a reasonable dynamicism to him. He's not a terrible athlete. He will grapple when that's the path to victory, in his opinion, and he is reasonably tough. But Talbot is just a much, much, much better athlete than him. He is the guy making the waves right now. I understand this is a slow build in a Shark Tank of a division at 135, but it's still a bit of weird matchmaking. Talbot by TKO. We're moving on. Michelle Waterson Gomez versus Jillian Robertson. Michelle Waterson Gomez is kind of in that, it's kind of that Cub Swanson 2.0 view again. I would have picked her in her prime to win this fight because she was reasonably hard to take down, reasonably hard to control, despite being small. She's the better striker than Robertson because Robertson is a terrible striker. But at 38 years old, having lost 4 in a row and 6 of her last 7, she is looking worse. Like, don't get me wrong, they're to good competition because Waterson Gomez in her UFC run does not take low-profile fights. She gets high-profile fights all the time. This is probably actually the lowest profile fight that she's ever had in the UFC. Not like the worst fighter because, of course, she fought, Paige Van Zandt. But her entire UFC career is very high profile. Let's see here. Okay, maybe not the Angela Magana fight. That is probably the low point. But like Paige Van Zandt, Rose Namajunas, Tisha Torres, Courtney Casey, Felice Herring, Karolina Kowalkiewicz, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Carlos Barza, Angela Hill, Marina Rodriguez twice, Amanda Lemos, Luana Pinheiro. These are all pretty high profile fights. And I'm not going to say anything about like losing a split decision to Pinheiro. That's respectable. I'm not going to say anything about losing a decision in 2020 or 2021 to Marina Rodriguez. That's fine. Even the Amanda Lemos fight, not terrible. But and getting your brain splattered by Marina Rodriguez is not a problem. But like, she just seems a little bit slower, a little bit weaker, and she's 38. That is old in this game. That is, for a change, I get to say that about someone who is actually even older than me. Robertson is a good wrestler, grappler, submission artist. That's what she does. She has pretty good ground and pound, actually. Her stand-up is really bad. If she gets caught standing for prolonged periods of time in this fight, Waterson will start to take her apart. But I assume that she's going to get her down. She is also a former flyweight facing a former atomweight. She should be able to just kind of brute force Waterson down. Waterson also has a reach disadvantage against her. I'm going by Robertson by submission. TKO on ground and pound is also an option, but she's got this. Minus 180 to minus 200 is a pretty close line on Robertson. Waterson Gomez plus 150 to plus 155. I don't know. There's some weird betting lines going on here. Andrei Arlovsky versus Martin Buday. This is not a good fight. I am picking Buday just because Arlovsky is 45 years old and does not seem to really have any venom anymore at all. He's still defensively fairly sound. He's still going to be in the fight because Buday is not especially dynamic or fast or explosive. He's just kind of a very durable, constant pressure force. And he did just lose to Shamil Gaziev. But I cannot pick Arlovsky to win. I'm not going to be shocked by it. This is heavyweight. People are, generally speaking, just kind of bad. But Buday is a decent enough striker, a decent enough wrestler. He is huge. He is durable. I feel like he'll be... aggressive enough and pressuring enough that Arlovsky doesn't really ever get anything comfortably going. And we end up with a 30-27 decision that could go either way, but that at the end of the day, Budaj picks up the dub. So Budaj is a minus 250 to minus 295 favorite. Arlovsky plus 195 to plus 230. By the way, the fact that Budaj is a smaller or a bigger favorite than Robertson, again, weird. Then we have Carlos Hernandez versus Ray. Man, I'm going to try this. I'm bad at Japanese names. Here we go. Tsuruya. Boom. Tsuruya is kind of like a Tatsuro Taira or like really any kind of Japanese prospect. They come in with like decent skill set. Like he can box. He is a very good wrestler, very good back take guy, and very good from the scarf hold, which is not necessarily something I think you want to be good at, but hey, okay, whatever. It shouldn't be your go-to, but we'll work with it. But everything is very, very, very divided. Like there's no interconnection between his skills. When he's boxing, there's no wrestling transition. When he's wrestling, there's no awareness of the boxing game. It's why he got stung in his road to the UFC finale by like a really, really, really basic punch. But anyways, I'm still going to pick him to beat Hernandez because Hernandez is not lethal in any real way. He's actually he's pretty low-end athlete for 125. He's not particularly fast. He's not particularly powerful. And at the end of the day, he also kind of has to do everything. Like he's kind of the opposite in the sense that like his skills don't at any point get away from each other. So that means he is going to be in takedown range, similar to his fight with Alan Nascimento. And at some point, Tsuruya probably just going to get him down, probably going to get his back, probably going to submit him, or maybe pound him out. Or maybe go the distance. I guess I could see that, but I got Tsuruya by submission. I do think that there's going to be a rude wake-up call for Tsuruya at some point. That being said, I also did say that about Tatsuya Taira, and it never really came. But I don't think Tsuruya is quite the athlete Taira is, and I don't think he's even as comfortable a fighter as Taira is in transition. It's just, I don't know. It's just the Japanese MMA scene is just really weird. The ethos of how they train their prospects and their fighters is very unique. And I don't get it. There you go. Anyways, Tsuruya is a prohibited favorite at minus 440 to minus 520. Hernandez plus 340 to plus 375. And then we have the joke of the fight because we have Ricky Simón versus Vinicius Oliveira. And this is not a late notice replacement fight as far as I can tell. This was a planned booking. I don't get it. Oliveira beats Bernardo Sopage and he gets Ricky Simón. I know Ricky Simón's on a 2-fight losing streak. I know he lost to Yadong Song and Mario Bautista and he needed a step back, but I don't know. This feels like a really, really, really too far step back. Like those are physically imposing fighters with like really, really well put together games. And Oliveira is not that. He's just he's got an aggressive striking game. He's fun. He's a good action fighter. I don't mean to put the guy down. It just feels like this is way too high for him. This is way too high of a step up. And Simón should be able to bring his ruthless pace, his power striking, his good combination, counter timing, and his wrestling to the table, and just absolutely overwhelm Oliveira and TKO. That's my pick. Oliveira minus 225 to minus 250. Oliveira plus 175 to plus 205. Give me a second here. Are you telling me that Martin Budaj against Andrei Arlovsky is a bigger favorite than Ricky Simón is in this fight? Are you telling me that Andre Fili is a bigger favorite than Ricky Simón? Are you telling me that Joe Pyfer is a bigger favorite than Ricky Simón when he's fighting Vinicius Oliveira? I don't understand the betting odds on this card. I don't get it. So maybe I got some hot takes and I just don't really know it. Like, I'm picking favorites, but like, I don't know. It's just very, very weird. Anyways, check out the links down below for my social medias, my video gaming stuff, the MMA Discord simulator, and I am off. I will talk to you after the fights.